Hello, this is Alexander Case, and this is my quality control column for Batman from Sunsoft for the NES. This is the first review for my column that I've covered that's previously been reviewed by the Angry Video Game Nerd or by Screw Attack. This is the first Batman video game to be released for home consoles. It's meant as a tie-in for the 1989 movie, directed by Tim Burton. The game was made while the film was in production, so consequently, the game score, which is good, doesn't feature any of the cues from Danny Elfman's critically acclaimed soundtrack. Now the score is still good. It's no Castlevania, no Mario, no Mega Man, but it's still a decent score. It won't make you want to put out your ears with a rusty Phillips screwdriver, but it's nothing that you'll write home about. Maybe something you might do an OC remix of. The gameplay itself is decent. It's nothing which I would describe as being, quote, Nintendo hard. It's, you will die. Your character will die many times, as to be expected for an old school Nintendo game, but it's not like a cheap Ninja Gaiden death. It's not a situation of getting knocked off your narrow platform by a Medusa head or a bat, or it's not a situation where you have to do expert timing while falling to avoid getting taken out by nasty bad guys. It's not Mega Man platforming. It's not Ninja Gaiden constantly respawning obstacles, which is fine. In fact, I'd almost compare this to Vice Project Doom, which I reviewed earlier in my blog. Except it's a little easier than Vice Project Doom, and it doesn't have any of the driving segments of Vice Project Doom. The controls are decent. There's an odd reversal of the pause and weapon select buttons. We have weapon select mapped to the start button rather than select. Select pauses the game and also displays your score. The game actually has a fairly heavy emphasis on the weapons, giving you 3 weapon types, the Batarang, a gyrojet pistol, and a sort of triple shot, all of which share a combined ammunition pool. Other than that, you also have a health meter. Main thing I noticed there with that is you get more ammunition than you get health. It puts a lot of emphasis on not doing the hand-to-hand combat in the game, which I find to be an odd difference from Batman in just about all the movies, all the comics, all the video games, where Batman hardly ever uses the batarangs, instead favoring the hand-to-hand combat and that sort of thing. It's an odd little twist. Anyway, the levels are fairly decently designed. They're big. They can be big. Some are more straightforward or larger than others. The game also doesn't have, there's some vertical gameplay as far as jumping puzzles and triple jumps and that sort of thing, but it doesn't feature too much of Batman's gadgets or the grappling hook or that sort of thing, as opposed to just the weapons I mentioned earlier. Now, as I mentioned earlier, this game does have the triple jump in it. This is probably the first Batman game, the only Batman game to really get to until the upcoming Arkham Asylum game, to really get to the ninja aspect of Batman's gameplay, as far as the Batman character. Batman Begins kind of got into this, but not quite as much. You can reach certain areas through doing a triple jump or general triangle jump, wall clinging jump kind of thing. In fact, Batman can cling to just about any vertical platform surface in the game. And you have to master the triple jump to get through certain areas of the game. The boss fights don't include a lot of enemies from the movie. There's the boss fight against the Joker at the end, which I admit I didn't get to. There's a basically a pattern boss fight, as far as learned the boss attack pattern fight against Killer Moth in the first level. And then there's a odd boss fight against a reactor core thing in the Axis chemical plant. The boss fight entails you going up against 3 segments of the core thing, which are laser guns which are shooting at you. Then you have to disable a shield that's protecting the core, and then you have to hit the glowing spot at the core. problem is the glowing spot is hidden whenever you shoot at it, and so basically you can't really hit it. The only way I found I was actually able to deal damage to it was if I went up close to point blank range and spammed punches at it. The problem is when you attack it, it turns into weapon mode and shoots at you. So there's no way to get to this boss fight without being hit. Basically, I just was lucky and just barely managed to survive the fight. I have no idea how I managed to beat it. I'll see if I can hunt down some better gameplay footage of this with some possible boss strategies for beating it and put that in my YouTube feed. Other than that, the game, it's okay. The platforming's okay. There are no real cheap deaths. There were a couple areas where I couldn't find a way to get by them without taking like 1 or 2 hits of damage. Again, there may be a way to get past that, but it takes a better player than I. Or it takes some hypersensitive button mashing. Not button mashing, hypersensitive jumping. Which actually leads to a bit of a complaint on my part with this game. Hypersensitive platforming in terms of having to precisely measure the amount of pressure you put in the jump button or anything like that isn't good game design. It may seem to be that way. There's this concept going around in the game industry these days, not the industry, but among fans, that hold games are hard, and I like to hold games, so therefore, if a game is hard, it must be good. And particularly if it's old school style with pain-in-the-ass platforming. Old school, hard platforming, like in Ninja Gaiden, or some of the early Mega Man games. I'm sorry for saying this heathen blasphemy. No, actually, no, I'm not. It's not good. It's bad. It's very, very bad. The platforming in Mega Man 1, in certain stages, sucked. The game sucked because of it. There are levels in Castlevania games which had ultra-hard platforming with cheap enemies knocking you off the platforms, which basically existed to extend gameplay by killing you over and over again. That's not game design. It's game design, but it's not good game design. It's bad game design. Less games should do it. And this game, I must admit, doesn't do that. There are a few moments where I died because of having missing jumps or hitting obstacles, but those weren't deaths which I felt were the game's fault or the enemy placement's fault. It's because I probably could have managed the enemies a little better earlier. Not totally my fault. Well, it is partially my fault, but it's not totally the game designer's fault. The few moments in the game where you do end up having to take damage, or that I found that I had to take damage to get past them, but not enough to kill me, those I consider bad, low points of the levels. So, as we come near the end of this, I reached the main point of these columns, just, is this game worth your money? Is this game worth my money? I'd say this game is decent. If you're a Batman fan, I'd say it's worth picking this up. This is probably one of the best Batman games ever. Mind you, there aren't a lot of good Batman games, and Arkham Asylum may knock this off the list of top Batman games of all time. But I've played worse games. Yes, I've played better games, but this one is a decent action platformer game. I would say give it a buy. You can't really give it a rent because they don't rent old games like this anymore. You might be able to give it an emulate. But I'd say it's worth giving this game a try. It's a game where if someone sees it in your collection, you won't need to explain yourself and feel embarrassed for having a bad game in your collection. Give it a shot. I'd say it's worth giving it a try, and if it ends up in Virtual Console, definitely give it a buy. Well, this is Alex Case. Well, thank you for listening, and I'll see you on my blog.